Hello listeners, and welcome to the Montel Weekly Podcast, bringing you energy matters in an informal setting. This week, we turn to the energy crisis in Norway and in the wider Nordic region. In a story that Montel broke, Norwegian Energy Minister Terje Aasland said that the country was considering cutting electricity exports to its neighbours in the event of very low hydropower levels. The minister was clearly prioritising the country's domestic consumption, but his comments caused uproar both at home and abroad. Helping me, Richard Sverrisson, to discuss the reasons why Norway would conceivably cut power flows to its neighbours and what such a move could mean for the wider market are Marius Holm, Rennesund of Thema. A warm welcome to you, Marius.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Geir Brønmo of Afry. A warm welcome to you as well, Geir.
Thank you very much, Richard.
And last but certainly not least, Johanees Bruun of the Danish system operator Energinet. Hello and welcome to the pod, Johanees.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to this discussion.
Great. I'd like to start off by looking at the background. And if I could turn to you, to Marius. So what is being considered by the Norwegian government and why?
Well, to be honest, it's difficult to see exactly what is being considered. I mean, they are saying that they are considering some kind of mechanism that restricts exports. We don't know exactly what they're thinking about, how they will do it, and when. But of course, the background is the extreme pricing we see all over Europe. That is also affecting southern part of Norway. And which is driven by the energy crisis we see across Europe with extremely high gas prices. Adding to this on the Norwegian side is, of course, that we've had a very dry spring in southern part of Norway, and reservoirs is at record low levels. So, of course, that's created an uproar public uproar in Norway, and the politicians are trying to respond on that.
What's your view, Geir? I mean, you're also based in Oslo. You're aware of the public debate in the country and that enormous pressure that policymakers are under. But still, is this just politics? Is it an empty threat, or is something that Norway could actually push through? Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very serious consideration, and I believe the authorities are performing a lot of discussions and analysis in the background that is not popping up in media. It's quite extraordinary that there is so little communication around what they're actually planning to do. I read this article this morning, Thursday, that's kind of browsed through all the news that has been on this particular measure about the reducing the exports, and it's been mentioned kind of in long interviews as one sentence here and one sentence there. So small kind of pieces of information are being leaked out, but no real practical considerations as we speak, but will probably come soon. And also to be said that as a kind of a soft already reduction going on in the market, the Norwegian government has asked the producers to hold back their production, not as a kind of a direct order, but as they have asked them carefully, which of course has been responded to by the producers. So at the moment, there is a kind of a warm-up going on in the market. And what as I understand, what the government is considering is to formalize it and attach it or connect it directly to something that is measurable in the market as the price area, reservoir levels, or something like that. And of course, it remains to be seen whether it's going to be a constraint on the production or a constraint on the actual exports. It's very exciting to see the practical measures that's going to be taken.
Absolutely. Is there a precedent here, though, Geir? Has this happened before that exports have been stopped due to low reservoir levels?
No, this would be something new and a completely new structure from the Norwegian government. It's of course there is measures that can be taken in a situation of crisis when you have the rationing, when the reservoir levels are extremely low and you actually need to save the water as a in a crisis situation. We are not there yet. It's only talk about that we might end up in a crisis situation during the winter, in a an unfortunate circumstance where we keep on exporting and we keep the reservoir levels at the minimum or even below minimum, as we see in the NO1 and NO2 in southern Norway at the moment. And we face very low inflows combined with a cold winter. Things can go wrong potentially. The Norwegian authorities are sending signals that the risk is higher than normal, and we have been in a yellow situation considered by Statnett for some months. So it's a signal that crisis can be coming up. But if the crisis is there, there are measures, and they can be quite extreme. Really controlling what's going on. And this what is on the table now is a structure that can be used before there is a crisis to avoid the crisis, which has not been done before by the Norwegian.
Absolutely. I mean, sorry to butt in there, Geir, but before I turn to Johanees, I'd just like to ask you, Marius, what's the lowest the reservoirs have ever been in southern Norway, and are we rapidly approaching that kind of situation?
Yes, we are. I mean, for this time of the year, we are at the lowest level seen. So we are kind of making records week by week right now, and unfortunately also this week. I mean, the reservoir levels came on Wednesday, and we saw that it was actually going down in the southern part of Norway. So we are in a situation we've never been before.
Okay, so I suppose we're praying for rain at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what's happening over the coming 8 to 12 weeks is extremely important. I mean, after that, what's coming then is in form of snow, and you can't use that for power production before next spring. So the coming weeks will be extremely important for the situation throughout the winter and early spring in the southern part of Norway.
Absolutely. But Johanees, I'd like to have your reaction to this discussion in Norway. What's your view here?
Well, first of all, I represent a TSO, and therefore security of supply is always in focus. I have sympathy for the Norwegian concerns as such, but I have to be honest and say I'm very frustrated by this proposal, unclear as it still may be. And I have difficulty to see, first of all, whether this is at all legal. I know that the Norwegian regulator is currently looking into, shall we say, what are the legal possibilities? What are the boundaries that needs to be respected here? So first of all, there is a substantial legal obstacle to implementing export restrictions. That's one thing. Secondly, even though, as I said, I have sympathy for security of supply concerns, I think it is simply the wrong tool that they're applying. In my view, and in Energinet view, security of supply is enhanced through our interconnected, and it is never to anybody's benefit to impose restrictions on the trade and the market. So at this point in time, we are on the one hand curious to see, as Geir said, that what is actually in store. We're also curious to see whether this will legally fly, and at the same time, we are rather frustrated. Maybe I can phrase it in the way that we have invested. The Danish electricity consumers, together with the Norwegian electricity consumers, have over the years invested in 1,700 megawatts of interconnectors between Norway and Denmark. And Denmark, in our way, the way we approach security of supply, is very much reliant on our interconnectors. And then this infrastructure that we jointly invested in is now certainly being cut off one-sided, potentially by the Norwegian government. That is, of course, a frustrating situation to be in, that they are, through their actions, if implemented, they're actually reducing security of supply in Denmark.
What's the level of debate, the public debate about the energy crisis in Denmark? Is it on the front pages of all the newspapers as it is in other countries, for example, Norway?
If you had asked me last week, I would have said that there isn't that much debate yet. But currently, it is very much on the front page. Just this morning, one of my employees was in the national broadcasting news speaking about the energy prices. So it has come to the attention also of the general public and the political level in Denmark, but less so in Norway. And I think also that it comes from the fact that if you look at the consumption per capita in Norway, it's probably 4 or 5 times higher than in Denmark. So as such, a price impact is more severely felt in Norway. But it is getting everybody's attention in Denmark as well.
I mean, other TSOs in the Nordic region have also been very critical of this this plan proposal from the Norwegian government. Jukka Russinen from the TSO Fingrid also was very critical publicly about it. But what could be the repercussions if, I mean, we're in the realm of speculation here, I can see that, but what would be the repercussions if this were to be followed through, Johanees?
Well, first of all, I think it's difficult for me to speculate on such a matter. I know that the policy from Energinet is that we want to keep our interconnectors open. And if we are, as we are, criticizing Norway for potentially cutting the export capacities, I think it would be strange if we were to do the same thing. So we're not planning, at least not from Energinet's side, and I don't want to speak for the Danish government in this, but I don't think that we would as such have repercussions or, if you like, retaliatory measures or something like that. But I do have a concern on a more general level that the energy crisis is a European thing. Well, actually, it's a global thing, but in a sort of our perspective, it's a European thing. And I think the solutions had to be found at the European level. And I don't think we will benefit. I don't think anybody will benefit if this is if this is handled through national measures.
I mean, that would be my next question, and turning to you here, Marius. Is there a danger here that we see certain countries moving into more isolationist and sort of national energy policies, and they're not thinking about the region or Europe as a whole? Is there a danger that some areas of Europe or some countries could retreat into that kind of a move?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so, and security of supply is, of course, on the top of everybody's agenda right now. And in a way, I think that's also the Norwegian government's fear in a way, because we've been exporting to Europe for some time. We have very low reservoir levels. We might need imports going forward, and I think their prime fear is that Germany can't deliver on that import during the winter, and they will make sure that we're not ending up in that situation, and that shows you're thinking more about your national concerns, and I think also other countries in Europe might do that going forward. And I totally agree with Johanees. I mean, trade and keeping the interconnectors open increases security of supply, right? For the whole system. So we might end up in with a more costly system across Europe, with less security of supply if this plays out, and more countries think more about their national supply-demand balance and than the trade as well.
Okay, what do you think here? Is there a concern that the principles of solidarity or cooperation, of interconnectivity, of regional security of supply are lacking here?
Yeah, I think that there should be some kind of aftermath, or maybe also as soon as possible, that the Nordic countries, at least as a group, should cooperate on measures to kind of handle this type of situation where there is a huge demand from the European side that can threaten a very particular security of supply concern that is very Nordic in its nature. The emptying of the hydro reservoirs. It's not only a Norwegian concern; it's a common Nordic concern. Of course, Norway has 100% almost hydropower, but the Nordic hydropower percentage is also extremely high. So if Norway runs dry of water, it has repercussions for the full Nordic system. And I won't go into specifics, but there would probably be possible to find measures that could protect the security of supply from a Nordic perspective in cooperation between the TSOs and the politicians, rather than going into national specifics.
Absolutely. I mean, Johanees, are you in dialogue with your colleagues both in Statnett, Svenska Kraftnät and Fingrid around this issue?
Yes, we are. I think at the moment I speak with my market colleagues on a daily basis. Again, I don't want to speak for them in any detail, but I think it's fair to say that we all see better solutions through the markets and keeping the markets open. So as such, the idea or the notion to have export restrictions is, it's not a flower that has grown in our yards. I think part of the problem in Norway is it's a little bit about narrative. I think the narrative in Norway is that Norway has export cable. And just Thursday morning, yesterday, Norway was importing through the North Sea link, through NSL cable to the UK. And if you, through the political debate or the public debate, constantly refer to these interconnectors as export cables, then you basically present the wrong picture. And I think we may, at some point, face a security of supply situation in Norway. But in all fairness, and maybe a little bit provocative, there is no security of supply issue in Norway at the moment. There is high prices in Norway, and the political level are responding to them, I believe, more than the actual security of supply. And the funny thing is that when Norway during these past weeks are exporting to the continent, that means that the prices are higher on the continent than in Norway. So even though it is presented as very, very high prices in southern parts of Norway, the prices are higher on the continent. And if there was in fact a supply crisis in Norway, the flow would change, and all these quote unquote export cables would turn into import cables, and they would actually help the security of supply situation in Norway. And the good thing about all these interconnectors is that they actually feed into the areas of Norway where they have the issue.
I think that's very true, and I think that's...
Can I have a comment on that?
Sure, Geir. Yeah, please, if you want got something to add. Yep.
I think probably Johanees has also followed a little bit the Norwegian debate, and it's extremely fierce, and it should be grateful to the Norwegian government for not considering seriously some of the proposals that has been on the table that are quite much more extreme than just when you see a high risk for security of supply issues, then you do some kind of export restriction that could be relatively soft. Let's see, but the proposals on the table has been things like putting a very, very low maximum price in the spot market, for instance, which is a completely different and much more dramatic market measure. So, and that being said, I understand Energinet and Denmark's frustration on this particular point, because throughout the recent years there has been a lot of export restrictions from quite some partners where Denmark has interconnectors. You can see the situation in Germany where you had a lot of grid works in northern Germany, and there has been a lot of restrictions on the export from Denmark to Germany by the German TSO, Tenet, one of the German TSOs, and also from Svenska Kraftnät has been in the past, and everything with reference to the security of supply. So this is not new for Denmark, and I believe the frustration is building.
Absolutely, it's been Denmark been in the firing line over many years in terms of import export. But Marius, is Johanees' point here that the narrative, the narrative in the public domain is at fault here? We should be talking about import cables as well. Is this, does it reflect the fierceness that Geir said about the public debate in Norway when you have these extremely high prices and very pressured politicians? What's your view here?
I agree with that, but I see the difficulty for the politicians to explain this. I mean, it's a complicated market, and when we built the cable and the debate around that, it's always been said that in a dry year you will get import, and that will help the Norwegian situation, and you will do that at even higher prices during the winter. But to kind of explaining to people that now we're in a very dry year, but the prices and the crisis are even more severe in Europe, hence we are still exporting. That's very difficult for people to grasp and understand. So I think for the politicians to be able to change that narrative, the way the discussions now have developed in Norway, which, as Geir said, is very fierce, is difficult. And adding to this is, it's very, when you're not into details on the power market and you see the two additional cables coming in and prices skyrocketing after that, it's very simple for people to point to that. Of course, the last two interconnectors means somewhat higher prices, and they mean more now than in a more normal situation because you have extreme pricing on the continent. But that's what people see, and that's the narrative that is out there. So in a way, I think politicians feel that they have to react in some way, and let's hope they do that in a way that doesn't ruin the market functioning. I think that's what we have to hope for and have to try to help them with.
Absolutely, Johanees. We're at, in certain regions in the Nordic area, we have prices of 500-600 euros a megawatt hour. We've seen this week, prices up at 4,000 for some hours in Lithuania. And we're in August, What are your concerns ahead of the, autumn, winter months?
I mean, at the moment we're facing the perfect storm, and it's just a storm that keeps getting more and more perfect, so to speak, through low river levels in Germany, low availability of nuclear in France. We all know these factors that factor in. So as such, we are in a very dire strait. And I think if we look at this in a market perspective, we need to look at what is to be done short term and what is to be done long term. I understand there is a political need to support consumers, businesses, etc., who are suffering. I think those measures are completely legitimate and valid. I just would very much like them to take place outside the market. I think, as a basic rule, you should separate your social welfare policies from your energy policies. So those short-term measures that are probably needed from a political and socioeconomic point of view should be made outside the market. Then, and I don't think price caps or splitting the market in a renewable market and a fossil market, and some of the others, I would say, more strange proposals that we've seen. I don't think they're the way forward. But I think we need to have a look at the current market model, the target model that we have been developing over the past, not just years, but even decades, where we have a zonal model with marginal pricing. I'm not saying that needs to be changed, but I think we have to have a proper analysis of whether this market model that has in fact served us very well for the past decades, whether that is a sustainable model going forward. I'm not necessarily looking so much at the current crisis, because I think it is although the duration may be long, I don't think it's a permanent situation. But I think we have to have a look in a longer perspective on a market design that is perhaps more designed for a market where an increasing amount of electricity is produced through variable renewable sources. I mean, this model was founded, or I developed in a market that was dominated by fossil fuels. And I think we owe it to ourselves and to the market, and ultimately to society and the consumers, to have a thorough look at the target model, whether that needs to be adjusted. And I think particularly important in that is that we're looking at this in a European perspective, not just national and not just regional, but look at it in a European perspective.
What's your view, Geir? Should we have is it time for a rethink of the market design? Move away from the marginal pricing model, for example?
I don't have any strong views on that. I believe that the current market design is being challenged, absolutely, and is being constantly developed on by authorities. An observation is that the power system is getting more and more political and less economic, in a sense. We need to go for decarbonization, and to achieve that, we need a strong political consensus in Europe to go for that. And it's really tricky to design a market that can support that without any kind of interplay between the economics of the market and the strong will of decarbonization from the politics side. And precisely how the day-to-day market should then be organized to facilitate more and more renewables coming in. That's a very complicated and interesting issue to debate. I believe we cannot land that one in this conversation. But very interesting times coming up. But I believe that this crisis will spark renewable ambitions in Europe, since we are showing such vulnerability towards certain aggressors that probably in hindsight could have been avoided. But of course, Russia has shown its its true nature than we managed to expect, and the long-term security of supply for Europe will probably be an issue that will be discussed for some years to come.
Marius, finally, unfortunately, we're running out of time, gentlemen, but a final comment from you about the potential, redesign of the market model. What's your view here? I mean, we're at 500-600 euros a megawatt hour in August. Should prices go even higher as we go into the autumn and winter, the pressure can only mount on politicians to do something, or to be seen doing something. What's your view?
Well, it's a difficult question, and we see that right now everything is up for discussion, basically. Hopefully, we can get through this winter and the coming year as well with some of the short-term measures that is already in place, with helping households and potentially also industries coping with the high power prices. Prolonging nuclear for months or a year in Germany would help to get us through the situation we see right now. And if we can get through that, I think we can turn to more the long-term developments in the power system. And as Geir said, I think it will definitely spark the investments in renewables. That is good climate-wise, and we need more capacity and more production into this market. And that's also what we see in Norway. So hopefully we can get the offshore wind developments going as well, and improve our supply-demand balance.
Hopefully there is light at this very dark tunnel at the moment. So, but gentlemen, thank you very much for a fascinating discussion, and thank you for being guests on the Montel Weekly podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
So listeners, you can now follow the podcast on our own Twitter account, aptly named the Montel Weekly Podcast. Please direct message any suggestions, questions, or, let us know if you think you have a good idea for a guest on the show. You can also send us an email to podcast@montelnews.com. Lastly, remember to keep up to date with all that's happening in energy markets on Montel News. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you and goodbye.